Yep. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to What is America to You. I'm your host, Derek Dempsey. I'm coming at you from a frigid New York. 7 degrees here in New York. And I say we, as always, my partner in crime, Jessica.
Hi there.
I haven't said this in a while, but you're on the wrong side of the camera. Look at my face. Look at your face.
I agree.
And I don't think our guests would disagree with that. Okay, listen, we want to say this. We had an amazing thing happen with Brian Downey. His interview, the Thin Lizzy drummer, I'm sure you know who he is.
Yeah, of course.
We released the interview 3 days ago, and he has surpassed all of our interviews from 6 months ago.
That's amazing.
550 billion people watched. No, I'm just kidding. 550 people. I mean, that's great. And what a talker he was. Lived up to the Irish gift of the gab. Anyway, so listen, we thank everybody for watching and sharing, and for the comments, as always, Karen and Sam. Also, please subscribe. We have to reach some type of decent number of subscriptions. Anyway, all that being said, our next guest is a singer and a songwriter in his own right. He has just released a great song. The song and the video was recorded during lockdown. Great video, very clever. The song is called I Need You, and I'm stuck on it. I keep playing it over and over again. It's brilliant. Great rock singer, great guitar player. He also hosts and produced his own internet chat show called Chaplin Talks, which is great. I've seen all the interviews. He's interviewed Duran Duran's Nick Rhodes, Rick Wakeman, keyboard player of Yes, and also the famous Bowie Life on Mars. And also Catch the Core, whose name I'm probably saying wrong, from the Old Crow Medicine Band. In addition to being a great singer, great songwriter, clever video maker, and a great guitar player with a lovely touch, our next guest's lineage is incredibly impressive. His great-grandfather was the playwright Eugene O'Neill. And if that's not enough, his grandfather was Charlie Chaplin, one of my heroes. Charlie Chaplin. One of the most compassionate humans that ever lived, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Every one of his movies. But don't get me started on Chaplin. I'm worse on Chaplin sometimes than I am on Sinatra. Anyway, you can hear our guests laugh in the background. It's great. So without further ado, it's my great honor and privilege to introduce you our next guest, Spencer Chaplin. Welcome to What is America to You. How are you doing, Spencer?
Hey, thank you very much for having me on. I'm glad to come on. What an intro. Very kind of you.
Well, it's the truth. And like this morning, I've been playing your song for a couple of days. My wife loved it. Thought you were great. I played it to Jessica about 10 times this morning. I'll play it in the afternoon. Is it available on iTunes?
Yes, it's available kind of every streaming platform.
Right. And will there be an album or?
Yeah, I'm working on it, I've got another song that's going to come out very soon. There's no set date yet, but it is going to be coming out very soon. And there will be an album because I'm working with a friend of mine and we're kind of writing everything together, and he's in Switzerland. I'm in England. So we're kind of passing back and forth, but it's getting done. It's getting done. There's a lot of songs there. It's just a matter of getting them down and recorded.
All original?
All original.
You have a great touch on guitar, by the way. It's a lovely intonation you got going on.
Yes, thank you. I try.
and I'm always careful when I say to somebody, it's natural for us to say, oh, you sound a bit like, or you remind me a bit. But do you ever remember the band Styx, Dennis DeYoung?
I do. I'm not massively, I don't know all their songs, but I know exactly who you mean. Yeah, I've never actually heard that. So, but that
you sound a bit like him.
He's an amazing singer.
Yeah, well, you sound like him in the high notes.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you.
Great. Okay, great. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, first and foremost, your show, Chaplin Talks. Mm-hmm. This is a two-part question. This is the fascinating question to me. When was it in your life that you realized that your grandfather, who you probably saw his movies from an early age and heard people talk about him, when was it you realized he's probably the biggest icon of the 20th century? And also, what made you start Chaplin Talks?
So, good question. Good questions. Okay, so for the first part, I would say, growing up with it, obviously you don't really notice it as much. We grew up in the house, which is now a museum, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I was born in the hospital in Vevey where my grandfather lived. Lived in the house across the road from what was my grandfather's house. My grandmother was there, and then eventually we moved into the house. So I kind of grew up with it. When did I realize? Maybe going to school, you realize kids, kids start talking a little bit. So from a relatively young age, probably like 7 years old, and then suddenly they come around the house and you hear people talking about, oh, that's Charlie Chaplin's house and stuff. That's when you really start to realize. But then after, my dad also owned a video rental shop down in the village, and there are Chaplin movies and posters in there. And so you always kind of saw it. So I knew there was something. I just didn't realize how big it was, let's say.
Yeah,
And,
I mean,
go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, yeah, that I can understand. I didn't know your father owned the video store down there. That's brilliant. But
Yeah.
because he really is, like, you got 4 or 5 icons from the 20th century, and of all of the silent movie stars from then, including Buster Keaton, Chaplin is the most recognizable. And I think the reason being is because he was an artist that said something in every movie he made, from the early stuff with Fred Karno and the smaller reels, right from the big movies like The Kid, Modern Times. Every movie said something, especially The Great Dictator. In 1939, to be making a movie, people don't realize that, to make a movie against Hitler.
Yeah,
Some
no,
moves,
it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. And, as my dad always said, I think he says that why Chaplin maybe did, I don't want to say better than the others, because I mean Buster Keaton is really iconic, but maybe made his films the way he did is because he understood how to emotion could be mixed with comedy. He understood that depending on the music in the film can change the way the audience feels and everything. So he just kind of took it all into his own hands and made his movies and controlled every aspect of it.
He was the original written, directed, produced music written by. There was a great story. Your aunt, oh my God, her name that was played Hannah in the movie.
Geraldine,
but how the hell that went down my brain? She talks about she brought a boyfriend home when she was like 19 or 20, and he was into. You might know the story. He was into movies, and he was into the silent movies, and he met Charlie Chaplin at the house like in 1967 or something, or 71. And the guy was a bit rude and said, well, I loved your movies, but my favorite was Buster Keaton. And she said, my father's face just dropped. And for the whole night, he was quiet, he was withdrawn. And the story about he always liked to sit by the fire, winter, summer, spring, fall. So she said he was quiet all night through dinner, and she said, I felt so bad. And then all of a sudden he pipes up and he goes, I gave Buster Keaton a role in my movie, was City Lights. Yes. No, it wasn't City Lights, sorry.
No, Limelight.
Limelight, I get those two, City Lights. No, Limelight, where they're doing the flea circus and everything, plays the violin. And he said, I gave him that role when he was doing bad. And he said the difference between me and him was I was an artist. And he said he waited all night to say that, but it was true. He was such an artist.
Yeah, I mean, I think he understood every aspect of a movie, and he really was. I mean, like I said in one of my episodes, growing up, I watched all these, my grandfather's films, watched The Kid, City Lights, all this stuff, without even realizing that it wasn't until years later he actually put the music on them. So I just thought the music was there, and that's how the films were made. I didn't realize they're all silent, I just kind of thought that's how they were put out. And, my dad's sitting there explaining to me that actually years and years and years later, when he's in Switzerland, he's writing all the music down, and he's, that's how the films are now, is with that music. So
which can cause confusion sometimes for us, because the older movies are in public domain, but the other movies are still all held copyrighted, held by Roy Export.
Exactly.
But you said that about the music, that scene where the kid is pleading in the movie, The Kid. I think we talked about it a bit on your Chaplin talks, where that classic, he's getting throttled.
Yeah,
and he looks just slightly off camera. Oh my God, that scene kills me. And then, what's his name? The kid, what was the kid's name?
Jackie Coogan.
Jackie Coogan's like pleading. And that music, which plays in the museum where the house was. I was there a couple of years ago. When you go into the film lot part, where you see him as the barber and the part from the Gold Rush, and you walk in there and they're playing that music. Actually, when I put my hand on the front door, that was a moment for me.
Okay.
I'm showing my fandom here, but I can't help it, you know.
But it's so funny though, because I mean, for me, growing up in that house, I guess you don't realize how special it is until you leave. You know, so once it became a museum, you leave there, you're actually that was a really special house. So so when I hear stories of these, like you saying, putting your hand on the front door, I can understand now, as I probably wouldn't have before.
And Einstein was there. Einstein was in that house.
Yes.
Truman Capote was in that house. Everybody famous was in that house.
But David Bowie, Iggy Pop, as well. Later on, Michael Jackson, everyone was there.
Frank Sinatra, probably. I don't know for sure, but probably. I know the story. Bowie went down one day in '76, and your grandmother opened the door, and she said, my name is David Bowie. I'm a singer. I'd love to meet your husband. He's out right now, and he was out with the country maybe or something, or whatever it was. It might have been earlier than '76, but don't get us starting about Bowie. Are you a Bowie fan?
I love. Bowie, Dylan. I absolutely adore Dylan. Those are probably like my two main influences when it comes to music, probably. I more or less, and with a lot of the blues stuff. I love blues music as well. So
I love Dylan. Dylan's just incredible. What did you think of the 2015 album Shadows in the Night, where he did all the standard American? You like that?
I did, and especially his last album that came out, the Rough and Rowdy Ways.
I haven't heard it yet. I got to check it out.
I really, really, really enjoyed it a lot.
I'll definitely check it out. But the other thing, because I want to know, what was the impetus to make you say, I'm going to start the Chaplin talks?
There's a simple answer and there's a little bit of a longer answer. The simple answer is lockdown. and then I would say it probably started a couple of years ago when I first moved to London. I got in contact with a guy. I was watching his YouTube videos because I just thought I'd just like to see a little bit about the history of London. Got in touch with him and said, listen, I don't know if you know anything about my grandfather. Can you take me on a tour of South London where he was brought up? I'd love to go to his old stomping grounds. I've been there before, but I'd love to really visit it. And he replied and he said, look, I have no idea, but if you do a video with me, then I'll take you around and I'll do all the research and you just got to come along and talk and I'll show you everything. So I did. I went with my sister. He made a video out of it and I got to see everything. And I'd say that was really the beginning of me kind of trying to figure out my family history. Then fast forward, a year, lockdown happens. I was in Switzerland. I had to run back to England. And then I had all this time on my hands. And I thought, well, I kind of want to figure out more about my, not only about my grandfather, but maybe my grandmother, cousins, everyone. And so I just came up with the idea, let's just start a podcast and try and educate people again, 100 years since the kid was released this month. So you might as well spread the word as much as you can.
Last on the day it was 100 years since the premiere was like, whatever it was, January 21st or something.
Yeah, exactly. It was around the 21st, exactly.
So I sat down that night and watched it, but we still have the public viewing, which is February 6th. God, I sound like a lunatic here. And he was wearing these shoes. This is what he does. I know Chaplin fans, and we adore him and again, I say this all the time, for his humanity. What he said in City Lights, what he said as the Tramp, what he even said in Monsieur Verdoux, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong. Monsieur Verdoux, how do you pronounce that?
Yeah, Monsieur in French is Monsieur Verdoux or Monsieur Verdoux, yeah.
Even in he said a lot.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite film of his. It's slightly underrated, but I absolutely love the dark humor in it.
Yeah, it's different in many ways,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's all the classics. You get the circus, the City Lights is such a classic and is so brilliantly done. But there's just something about that scene in Monsieur Verdoux when he's on the boat and he's trying to get the chloroform on their face, and it all goes wrong and they're fishing, and There's just something about it that I absolutely adore.
It is pretty dark as all hell. I love the scene. I don't want to give it away. Look, anybody that needs to get a spoiler alert on Chaplin has been living under a fucking rock. You know what I mean? Like what? So I'm saying, anybody that didn't see Monsieur Verdot, I love when he talks about his nature. When it comes to the scene about he's already been tried and he's been sentenced. And they offer him a drink, and then he's like, actually, I will take that drink. I love that scene. And everything he says after that about it's my nature. But what he also says in court about that one man, you kill one man, you're a murderer, you kill millions, you're a hero. Yeah. That's not quite the quote, but we could talk about that movie all day. It is a classic.
Yeah, no, it's a classic. And yeah, God, so many great films. But it's true, I agree with you. I mean, some of these films came out 100 years ago. So if you're getting spoiled, if you're not too sure about the endings of certain films,
you shouldn't be allowed out after 8 o'clock.
Go and watch them.
Yeah. Now, you had Nick Rhodes from Duran Duran. He was great.
Yes. He was amazing. And you know what? What was so interesting, I mean, I've never met him before. I got in contact with him through a very nice friend of mine. And as soon as I got the text saying that he was going to do it, I'm like, oh, interesting. I was like, does he just want to chat, or what does he know about? Does he know anything about my grandfather? Is it, and but I didn't get a response, but they gave me a date. I went online to interview him, and he's talking about all this stuff. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Nick Rhodes from Duran Duran, who's the nicest guy ever. And then suddenly he's talking about this particular part of the autobiography when he's in the train and he realizes he's famous, I was really surprised, very nicely surprised. He was a really nice guest.
Is that the part of the autobiography where he says he kept seeing more and more people at every stop, and he said there must be a dignitary, and it was for him.
Exactly. And he said he was in I think he says he was in the bathroom shaving or something, and he kind of, they're stopping, and every stop there's more and more people. Exactly. And then after he popped his head out the window and he's got like no top on, and then after he realized that people are chanting his name, because back then you didn't know that you were famous, there's no way of really telling. So everyone just they knew he was on the train, and they all came to the train station and mobbed him basically.
Yeah. I'm just having a moment of like, wait, like I kind of always felt I had when you identify with a character, you identify with another person, I'm going to be honest and say, when I read a biography about my heroes like Sinatra or Bowie or, certain political figures, I love when I read something about them and I go, I'm like that. Maybe I'm I'm being honest, but your grandfather wasn't much. I don't drink alcohol. I never did. And your grandfather wasn't much of a drinker.
No, I mean, I think that comes down to his upbringing, because his father kind of went down that road. And I think from what I understand and what I'm told as well is that he smoked a little bit, but he drank a tiny bit, but not really. And it came down because my great-grandfather was an alcoholic who passed away quite young. And my great-grandmother, so his mother, Hannah, ended up in a mental hospital. And I think he was always kind of worried that it was going to alter his state of mind, sort of thing. That's what I was told, at least. So
that's what I read.
Yeah.
And his father, Charles Chaplin Sr., was quite popular and famous.
Yes, he was. Exactly. During those days, he was he was a theater actor. He was in vaudeville, kind of was on stage, and they're all expected to kind of go for a drink with the audience afterwards.
Yeah.
So, I guess it was a slippery slope, going down there. But those beginning chapters of his autobiography, when he kind of talks about his experience of being locked out of a house and going to find his dad in a pub, drunk, is very sad. He had a very, very tough upbringing.
Yep. And he actually says that there's a moment in the Walter Matthau video, I think it's called A Gentleman Tramp, and it goes through his life. But at the end, Walter Matthau, his wife and his kid are there at the house, and I think it's 75. He's already been knighted, and he's sitting at the chair, and they're reading about Master's Chaplin was very good in Sherlock Holmes, which was something he was in when he was like 12.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's a scene where he looks at the camera and he goes, I had a really hard life. Heartbreaking, the way he says it. Do you recall that? It's just one,
Yes.
he just looks.
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking. Now, you said you studied, particularly in the last couple of years, your family's background. This might be throwing you in the spot. Was there any particular thing that blew your mind in your studies and learning about your family, or that took you by surprise?
That's a good question. By surprise, maybe not, because I think he did so much in his life in general that there is. I mean, what's this? Wasn't there a story of what was the boat that he was on? He was on a boat, and someone shoot someone thinking that it was my grandfather.
Yes, that was William Randolph Hearst was on a boat. There was rumored that your grandfather was having a affair with, what was her name?
Exactly. He was having an affair with a very famous name.
I can't believe I can't think of her name. She was the one that was Rosebud, but there was a guy called Thomas Ince.
Yes.
And he looked like your father, narrow shoulders, small, petite guy, and he was sitting at the bottom of the steps on the boat. And the rumor has it that William Randolph Hearst thought it was your grandfather and killed Thomas Ince. Thankfully, he didn't kill your grandfather, because he wouldn't have got all those great movies that came after the kid. Marion Davis. He was suspicious that Charlie was having a affair with Marion Davis. That was a crazy one.
Yeah, that. I was quite surprised to hear that, and I'm also kind of surprised that there aren't more stories like that. I mean, after The Great Dictator, there's rumors that either Hitler loved the film, or he put out a hit on my grandfather as well. Which one's true? I have no idea.
Yeah, I read he put him on. He had him on the top 10 list of people to get when he came to America. You know.
Yeah, and my grandfather also said that he kind of regretted making that film in the end, didn't he? Because he said, if I had known the harsh reality of what came out of it, I probably would have never made the film.
I did read that, but that brings us back to Shoulder Arms. There's a great scene in Shoulder Arms where he's in the trenches and he shoots.
Yeah.
But it's just so nobody can impersonate him. But when he does it, he goes and he marks it up, and that's that dark humor that was always there with him, which I think comes from his poverty background and his mother having the insanity issues. That dark humor was his way of surviving. But that he was worried, and the people involved with him were worried that they would think that he was making fun of the guys in the trenches, but they loved it. I loved that scene. One down, and he's looking at the madness of war. So I'm glad he made The Great Dictator, because the legacy of that. In the movie Chaplin, when what's his name, Robert Downey Jr., the guy playing his brother goes, nobody wants to see a movie about Hitler. And he goes, I do.
Yeah.
Even though it's only acted, I love that. And that's what an artist is. He's like, I don't give a fuck what anybody else thinks. I want to see it. And that's the real thing for me as an artist. You want to play the guitar the way you want to write that song. Fuck what anybody else thinks. Give them.
No, he really went for it.
He did.
Definitely. And I'm talking about Shoulder Arms as well. When they're in the trenches, one thing scene always sticks out is they're going to war, and they're running in the trench, and he's there, and they're like fighting to go to war. And my grandfather gets up and he looks over the thing and he sees and he ducks. He goes, "Oh no, it's okay. Let's the next guy go. Come on, you go." I love it. So
I love that. And that's the one where is that the tree? He's doing the tree as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's easy to get them mixed up, because the fact that they're in black and white, and there wasn't necessary stylization in cinema at that stage per se, and he was always the tramp. But that's a great scene. And there's also where I think when he throws the grenade and it goes down as only he could do it.
I think back in those days, I mean, there's all these talks about him being the highest paid film star or whatever of the time, but I think he was kind of expected to make a ridiculous amount of films in a very short amount of time. He'd make 3 films in less than a week sometimes. That's
right. He made 3 in a week with what was the name of the guy that he worked for when he went over with Fred Carno? I can't believe these.
Max Sennett. From Keystone.
Yeah, Keystone. Yeah, Max Sennett. And that's when he changed the face of movies. We all know that, of course. I want to just read something to you, the liner notes from City Lights. This is an interview from 1967 for Life magazine.
Okay.
I can't remember who he was being interviewed, but I think this is fascinating. He said, if I can read it, fucking now. In motion pictures, something very odd sometimes happens because the scenes are short scenes. You have more sureness, and you say, well, that was good. I felt everything and had the lump in my throat. Wasn't obvious about it, tried to hide it. My timing was right, and it was all convincing. That's it. Then your grandfather goes on to say, but then you see it on the screen, and there's an element lacking. What's wrong? And then I came to the conclusion that it was the camera. Only half of everything is photographed because there is that black shutter, and that comes in between every frame. And this may catch you during those special vibrations. You might just be out of sync, as it were, with that special thing, whatever it is. I'll send this to you, but when I read that, it blew my mind. Because when I would watch him in all those old films from 100 years ago, from 80 years ago, he stood out as if he was of the time right now, watching it where everybody else seemed slightly out of it. And that's why that stood out to me. And it's probably a big conversation. I hope it made some type of sense to you.
No, he's, no, he really was. He was an incredible guy, you know. There's no denying it. So but I am very proud to be down, you know, from that family, and, you know, and having the experience of doing these interviews and learning stuff, especially from my dad. Doing the interviews with my dad is something I never done before. So I'm really grateful.
He's very pleasant. He's a very
he's
gentle.
A very, very gentle, nice guy.
Jessica asked me earlier on, did you ever impersonate your grandfather in your life?
Just for fun,
No,
you know?
I don't think I have. Maybe as a kid.
You know what's so funny? You just went. You actually did that.
Yeah, I just noticed
You
that.
just did the Chaplin.
Okay. There you go.
Brilliant.
Well, not on purpose then.
But there's a photograph of you with your girlfriend where your hair is kind of big and you got a blue suit on. Looks like you're at a wedding.
Yeah.
You look like your grandfather in that shot. Fuck.
Okay.
You know. But anyway, you mentioned that you like Nathaniel Rateliff.
Yes, I love him.
Brilliant.
I absolutely adore him. I love. He's brought out. Well, him and the night. He's brought out his latest one. I think is a solo thing, and then he's got 2 albums. I think with the Night Sweats, and every one of those albums are just incredible. I think he's got that vibe about him. I don't know. He's just got that energy, that soulful kind of. I love it.
I met him. Quick story, in New York, doing one of my gigs in Times Square. I see this bunch of guys that look like traveling gypsies. And I say to them, I don't mean any offense, but you guys look like you're gypsies from Eastern Europe, which we could get into. And they're like, well, we don't take offense at all. What's great? It's the best thing we ever heard. And I'm like, what do you do? And now I'm doing Suspicious Minds by Elvis. And I hear this harmony. I'm like, who's doing that harmony? So I'm doing it in G and I'm holding on the D7. Who's doing that harmony? And this tattooed big guy, like, come on up. And he's like, yeah. And like, come on, you got to sing that harmony. So he comes beside me with his tattoos, his whiskey Spencer, nearly knocked me out. And it's just,
Really?
It was, so we start, then I said, I don't know who you are. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know it was the son of a bitch. Give me a drink. Didn't know it was him.
Yeah.
So I said to him, I don't know who you are, but I got to hear you doing a song. So I use a Gibson J150 jumbo acoustic. I put it over him and he sings I'll Be Waiting from Nathaniel Rateliff, The Night Sweats.
Exactly.
He just starts playing and singing after 3 notes. I'm like, I said to him after, I don't know who you are, but you're the real deal. So he leaves me his name, leaves me a lovely tip. I go home, realize it, son of a bitch, give me a drink. And I've been a fan ever since. I'm trying to get him on you should get him on your show.
Yeah, I would love to. I think I might have reached out to him, but I this is the problem with these shows, is finding the right people to reach out to.
Oh yeah.
But it's good. I like the challenge. I've got season 2 of Chaplin Talks coming out relatively soon. I wanted to come out sooner than later, but with lockdown and everything, it's a bit tough. So it's going to be out probably Easter.
Could you give us any clues of any particular guests you have, or would you rather hold off?
Well, up in the air for now, to be honest. I know I've got some good guests. I don't want to ruin it because until I recorded the interviews, you don't know they're going to be on.
That's true. We kind of have that too. Well, you know, Brian, where am I getting? Robert Downey Jr. would be great.
Yeah, exactly. He's very tough to get hold of. So if you're listening, Robert, give me a call.
Yeah. He's just in the bathroom. Robert, come here. Come here.
That's a call, dude.
That almost sounded wrong. He's in the bathroom. That sounded like a joke on his past. He'd laugh at that. And if he didn't, fuck him. But listen, we're getting into like late time here. I wanted to the gypsy thing. There was a story about when a couple of years after your grandfather died, they were cleaning out the bedroom in Verveil.
Yeah.
And they found a safe that they had to get a locksmith in and open it. And there was one thing in there, a letter from some guy in South London that knew him. And he said, I know who you are. I'm not looking for money. I'm not looking to shame you. But I want to let you know who you are. He said he was born in the Black Patch. And I think your Uncle Michael was doing a documentary. I don't know if it came to fruition. And I love gypsies. I kind of often feel that I might be part gypsy. But aren't we all? You know, aren't we all some way? Do you think that your grandfather felt maybe that he was part gypsy, or?
I do know of that. So I know that story pretty well. My Uncle Michael is. I think he's. I think it is going to come out if it's very soon. I think. I have no idea when, but it's definitely made. I'm pretty sure it's made.
Oh,
I've seen a trailer for it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because when he was born, he didn't have a birth certificate. But I guess in those days, you never really did. But yeah, there's a lot of rumors about that. If you ask my sister, she'll probably say, yes, it's true. I think there's a lot of, depending on who you ask in the family.
Yeah.
But it's definitely interesting.
Well, some people might be ashamed of it. I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of at all.
No, I don't think. The fact that he even kept the letter probably says everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, and of course, who knows what was in his brain? And it's kind of like people that are forced to come out of the closet that are gay. They're afraid it'll affect their fan base. I'm sure he was worried about his fan base, and you know.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's funny because you see him in Peaky Blinders as well, don't you?
I've never seen Peaky Blinders. Tell me about this.
Yeah, there's one bit where they're in a bar, I think in Birmingham somewhere. And they're like, I'm going to introduce you to Charlie Chaplin. And there's a guy who plays my grandfather in it. It's quite funny. It's only for like two seconds, but it's quite funny. But there's a lot of gypsies there. And I think that's kind of why they talk about how he could be a gypsy in it as well.
Well, he looked nothing like what would be your great uncle. What was his name? Whose wife was called Gypsy. What was Sydney? His wife was called. Her nickname was Gypsy, and they lived in. Gypsy. They never bought a house, right? They always lived in a caravan.
Yes, always lived in a caravan. He never wanted the responsibility of a house. My dad always told me that, and he would. Yeah, they would just travel around the country. Apparently, they had a guy. My dad said, and he would just call up and say, "Look, we're going to go to Florida or whatever," and the guy would drive their caravan all the way down there, and then they'd go set up and. Just travel the country like that. I think in the end they lived in a hotel.
That's yeah, and then he died in '67 on your grandfather's, maybe on your grandfather's 67. I have so many dates to remember. But listen, I would talk. You're such a nice guy, by the way. I want to say that publicly. You really are.
Thank you.
I second it.
You got a great spirit.
Thank you.
A great. You love to laugh.
Yes, of course. Who doesn't?
Yeah. What I always find out with musicians. Like, we're a little bit kooky, you know?
Yeah. I think you can never take life too seriously, you know? And I love, maybe that's the Irish in me. My mom's side of the family, maybe that's why I like a bit of the dark humor, you know?
Do you feel an affiliation with Irishness?
Yeah, definitely. 100%. I absolutely love Irish music.
Really? Like
completely.
Like the diddly diddly idol stuff, or?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Everything from the Pogues, like the Pogues I absolutely love, to Dubliners and stuff. Yeah, and I go to Ireland every once in a while as well. I've done a few gigs over there.
Your grandfather had a house in Cork, right?
Yeah, no, I don't know if my grandfather.
I think he had a house in Cork. I think so, but that's it.
Well, he used to go visit Waterville all the time. I know that.
Waterford, that's right, yeah. Now, have you played in New York?
No, I'd love to though. I'd love to, absolutely love to. I'm going to come check you out next time.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I cut you off. You're about to say something. You said about Waterford. Your grandfather visited Waterford.
Yeah, but my dad and my parents had a couple of houses in near Belfast as well. Not anymore.
Wow.
But yeah, no, there's a lot of, and I go back all the time, and I played in Limerick and all that kind of stuff. So
Well, like I said, I don't know. I played in New York in Times Square 250 nights a year. I don't know how I had a voice, but obviously since lockdown, it's over. So, you know, if it ever gets back and you're in New York, let me know. And, you know, maybe we even set a gig up, you know, do a gig there.
yes, definitely, absolutely. And the same if you come to London. Let's you know, meet up.
Absolutely, I'd love to. And I'm hoping to I was going to come to Switzerland again this year, but not going to happen. Maybe next year.
Yeah, no, I forget it. I mean, I was hoping to do another video in the museum actually, but I have no idea what's going on at the moment. So I guess you just have to play it by ear.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to go back again. So if you're there, and my plan.
Yes, no, give me a call. Give me a
Okay.
call. I'll take you.
Oh, you're a gentleman, Spencer. Thank you so much. A great honor, I must say. Great to speak to you.
Thank you.
And I love your shows.
Thank you for watching all my episodes.
I can't wait till the next ones. I love it. And I love hearing all these little stories I've never heard. I can never get enough Charlie Chaplin, you know. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, good. No, thank you very much, huh?
Spencer, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Absolute pleasure. Cheers,
Bye.
Eric. Cheers. Bye.
Absolutely brilliant. That was Spencer Chaplin. In his own right, a singer, guitar player, songwriter. Very talented guy. A real nice guy.
Oh, absolutely. That was
Real.
a phenomenal interview.
Yeah.
So engaging. Such a warm guy.
Yeah, he really, and I love his laugh.
Yeah.
You know, well, he is the grandfather of the greatest laugher of all.
And you can tell sometimes with the twitch, you know, the mouth.
Yeah, when he did that,
Yeah.
there's no escaping your genes. And I just said he's the grandfather. I meant to say he's the grandson.
Grandson, yeah.
Just in case we have people complaining. He's not a grandfather, he's too young. But he, of course, was he is the grandson of the great Charlie Chaplin, who anybody who knows me knows when it comes to filmmakers and comedians and humanists, Chaplin's my guy. Incredible. So yeah, we will put the video for his latest release, and as he said, he's going to be releasing more songs and recording. But All I Want, great song. He sounds like Dennis DeYoung from Styx. What was that song they had on Desert Moon?
Oh, that's a great song.
Great song from the 80s. Great song. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for the comments. Even the person who said that we weren't diverse. What? We're not diverse? Don't get me started.
Right.
We won't start. Thanks again, and don't forget we got loads of videos there. The Brian Downey video has broken all of our records, and coming up we have one of the original singers of Mr. Sandman. We still have Sananda Maitreya, who's going to be finishing his album. As always, things last a little longer than expected. That's going to be a big one for me as well. Okay, thank you for tuning in. From me and Jessica here
Thank you.
in the cold, freezing cold New York, and from all of the crew, meaning me and Jessica, at What Is America to You, thank you very much. See you next episode. Goodbye for now.
Driving along, minding my own business, heading east through the Kentucky rain. There on the radio, Johnny Cash was singing. I heard myself just to see if I still feel pain.